The year is 2016. In a world where you can buy crystals with crystals, drink cozy hot cups of icy, and have the most iconic dance-off known to man, lies what is perhaps one of the greatest stories of all time, Mashed Bandicoot. Developed by NPCarlsson and the Illuminati, the story-based YouTube poop is spread out across several videos, the mainline story being in 2 parts, with 3 additional alternate endings released roughly 5 years later. Thanks in part to relatively good writing, compelling characters, and stellar video editing.
I really like the use of that green screen explosion.
The saga of the evil doctors have had a long-lasting impact on the world of YouTube poop, and the legacy worth upholding is a triumph of the art form. But today I would like to break down one of the more noteworthy aspects of these videos, how it handles the subject of relationships.
What? What do you mean?
A strange topic to cover, I'm aware, but I'm sure it'll make sense by the time this video is over. Personally, I'm incapable of drawing incredible fan art, so I figured making a video essay would be easier for me to do in regards to Mashed. Plus, it gives me a good excuse to subject you to the same ramblings that my friends have suffered through for months on end now. For this video, I'll be deriving my observations from the official Mashed Bandicoot playlist, alongside other miscellaneous videos from NPCarlsson's channel. There will be spoilers. I will not be including Five Nights at Foster's in this video because I'm a little piss baby who gets easily frightened, and I'm the only person on the planet who thinks Five Nights at Freddy's is unironically terrifying in every aspect. And it's not on the official playlist either. I could have just said that. Unlike the rest of the relationships present throughout these videos, where a general dynamic can only be attributed to a handful of characters, the themes of both friendship and rivalry are present among the many characters within these videos. Though some dynamics are not necessarily unique to these characters, the variety of said dynamics help the less story significant characters stand out. For example, the shared camaraderie of the Penguins and the Minions, respectively, are the most memorable aspects. For another example, some could point to Crash and Markiplier. I interpret Markiplier, however, to be Crash's parasite, given that he latches onto the Bandicoot and only leaves him during the Shoot the Mario Head ending, where the world Crash inhabits as we know it is drastically changed. This is similar to how Crash elitists jumped out the franchise during the 2000s and blindly hate any game released during that era.
Oh, a metaphor.
Well, actually, it's not a matter.
One could even point to the crew of the story's antagonists, Robotnik, Cortex, Mario Head, and Uka Uka, as an example of a friend group. I mean, after all, they're the main antagonists of the YTP and are constantly seen together. When the climactic fight between Cortex, Robotnik, and Crash Alike occurs, the remaining friend group chooses to side against their own former friends rather than with them. They leave the original friend group in shambles. Just like they are in real life. At least Engine still backs Cortex up during this period, but don't worry, we'll definitely be getting into Engine later, just under a different context. But for now, all I will say is
promotion. Awesome. My lord, no.
Then, of course, there's a dynamic which this section is named after, give its important plot relevance. This refers to the enemies to friends dynamic belonging to Mr. Krabs and Mario Head. Now, this isn't unique to them, as this dynamic is also shown by Tiny Tiger and Heavy, but what sets them and the main duo for this section apart are a few things. For one, Tiny and Heavy's arc is done and over with in the span of a single montage, and actually, I think that might be the last time we even see them together in the YTP. On the contrary, Mr. Krabs and Mario Head have been established to be rivals early on, not just in Mashed Bandicoot, but another YouTube poop by NPCarlsson. Krabs reels in Krabs reels in a banana shit sandwich.
Good job, son.
Secondly, even without this context, the arc is nicely spread out during both parts of Mashed Bandicoot, especially the second, as opposed to, again, a singular montage. And finally, their quote-unquote rivalry isn't even a rivalry at all, unless you would consider a rivalry violent and hate-fueled. While with Tiny and Heavy's it's a minor quarrel, this has the potential of being a full-on bloodbath. The root cause is trivial. Mario and Krabs' violent feud began with $1. I'm aware that I sound like I'm underestimating the importance of the dollar, but in my defense, I was not allowed to watch SpongeBob growing up. Going back to the song, it's more than an exposition on the relationship, it's also a clever foreshadowing. See, throughout the number, we hear Mario's disembodied voice sing. What could be seen by many as an incorporation of a voice clip, it goes much deeper than that. Despite Mr. Krabs' supposed hatred towards the mischievous head, Mario doesn't think too much of it. Hell, he only takes on Mr. Krabs because Eugene decides to handle the fight instead of Crash. And when that fight comes to an end where Mr. Krabs is the victor, Mario apologizes, gives him $1, and asks,
Now can we be friends?
It'd be one thing if he said, can we be friends? But the fact that he asked if they can be friends now shows that he had desired this from a certain point onwards, or even this whole time. Sure, one could argue that Krabs accepts the friendship offering too soon, But going back to the fight, we can see his full arsenal, including a heart attack. This is a metaphor for how Mario Head still holds a place in his heart. This hatred that he had never felt before isn't a deep-rooted vengeful one, but a mix of anger and love. And when the two become friends, it becomes one of the most beautiful, most touching moments in the YTP saga. Until Cortex fucking murders Mr. Krabs.
Can you feel it, Mr. Krabs?
His death pisses off Mario Head, and he refers to the late Eugene Krabs as his best friend, which is very bittersweet. It is Mario's rage that causes Crash to get a hold of the gun, which ultimately leads to 4 separate timelines. And while part of me does respect that Krabs remains deceased during these timelines, another part of me wishes that in the end of Shoot Mario Head, the amount of energy released by the explosion, combined with the billions of lives lost, Mr. Krabs would have been resurrected, only then to be the only person in the entire universe. Alone. The same way Mario Head was left without his best friend. Poetic, really. Almost metaphorical for each other's plights. Also, that ending makes me existential, so, I don't know how to end this segment. Wait, is Mario Head gonna eat Mr. Krabs' corpse?! The themes of love and lust are also prevalent throughout the YTP. Sure, there are not as many cases as there are with platonic relationships, but these themes run just as deep, are just as plot relevant, and are just as metaphorical. For instance, Chick and Stu are very much dating. That's not canon, it's my canon, it's a metaphor for my canon, shut up! Many of these characters exhibit traits of being in the LGBT community as a whole. Of course, there are no LGBT-related main characters in this YTP saga more iconic than Cortex, Crash, and Aku Aku.
Say what?
Crash is a fairly simple and stagnant character. He wants to defeat the evil doctors, save the universe, plow into Dr. Cortex, and low-key Dr. Robotnik, like a
Skank!
Aku Aku undergoes his own character arc in regards to his sexuality. Yet the storyline is hidden in plain sight. It all begins shortly after his introduction, when this interaction occurs.
Hello, handsome! No, it cannot be.
See, most people would view this as Aku Aku being upset or even scared about the evil that has begun to plague their world, but I'm an intellectual with a big brain and bigger ego, and I can clearly see that George Volcano is Aku Aku's gay awakening. There's other instances of him masking.
Get it?
The fact that he is attracted to men, like when he is dead set on Crash punching into his nuts. This is a metaphor for the fact that he has neither arms nor nuts, so he himself cannot perform CBT. In part 2, he also mentions that they have to.
Fuck your sister.
Note, however, that he says have to, not that he wants to. This is the closest we ever get to him desiring the opposite sex. And even then, that's very unlikely, as at the end of the Y2P, he someone accepts who he and Crash are when he says,
I can't believe we're gay.
As for the case of Cortex, he is down bad, horrendously. So much to the point where as early as 8 years old, he had a case of quote-unquote luck. This, of course, showcases his attraction to females. However, in the present, he desires for Crash to top him, just like in their sex tape. This indirectly confirms him as bisexual. He also has a crippling case of internalized biphobia and his apparent attraction to men in particular. For instance, when he says to Mario Head,
No gayness for reals.
This is a metaphor for me wanting to bash in his comically sized skull. But I am only delaying the inevitable. A warning to you all. I have lost track of how long he has plagued my mind. Every day I wake up, and my uncontrollable hyperfixation has already chosen him. It is very difficult for me to go on with my life at the moment without dwelling upon his physical non-existence. Sometimes I want it to end. Sometimes it is nothing but pain. But sometimes it is the foundation of life itself. The manifestation has brought me places, such as this video and my entry in the It's About Time collab, also by NPCarlsson. With my entry, I have made my bed. And now, with this section of the video, I shall lie in it. Hey guys, Future Midnight here. I am very much aware that the engine section looks like shit, but I made that right after I found out my great uncle died, and I'm too lazy to go back and make it look good. And I think I just broke the flow of this entire section. Oh, goddamn. To me, Engine is one of the most relatable characters in the entire YTP, in that he's socially isolated, awkward, depressed, and openly bisexual. Wait, where did he get that flag from? It is absolutely a no-brainer that N. Gin is the embodiment of love and lust in the world of Mashed Bandicoot. In nearly every scene he appears in, he exhibits at least one of these traits unapologetically. Whether it be him watching a sex tape of Crash and Cortex, outright telling Crash and Aqua Aqua that his balls aren't shaved, or when he says Crash's sister, Coco, who is a minor, is hot. Oh, shit, wait, no, I don't really take it back, I take it back, I take it back! But everyone knows him from his lust-fueled relationship with Grounder. Thanks to the confirmation of his sexuality, we now know that N. Gin is, in fact, a depraved bisexual. A harmful stereotype, yes, but not so much in this case. If anything, it's one of the most intriguing parts of the videos as we see him become more attached to Grounder, and how deep he goes into the point of no return. In his explicit body language, he's constantly touching and stroking Grounder, if not within close proximity of him. In his explicit words, he details everything he wants to do with Grounder, regardless of how much the robot henchman wants to do it. In his explicit attitude, he is unafraid to snap at anyone of any power who interferes with his love for Grounder. And in my explicit thoughts, I am Grounder.
Maybe there is a reason why I get bullied so much.
Unfortunately, though the fate of the couple is ambiguous for the original ending in Shoot Dr. Robotnik, the remaining two timelines end with their ultimate demise. In Shoot Mario Head, it's nothing special, since everyone but Warkaplier is dead by the end, but in Shoot Dr. Cortex, where the relationship is expanded upon, Grounder is brutally killed off. Try as he might, N. Gin fails to avenge his fallen lover. He too is killed off in this ending, but not before giving us one of the most badass lines from any YouTube poop ever.
Now we can be together! In hell!
Perhaps this is a metaphor for life. You find yourself, fall in love, and you get projected thousands of feet out of the atmosphere in a detached robotic head hurtling towards the moon. Truly, no experience is like it.
That was pretty gay.
The most obvious and explored dynamic throughout this entire YTP is the fractured relationship between the parasitic twin brothers, Dr. Neo Cortex and Dr. Ivo Robotnik. During the opening 26 seconds of the YTP that, conveniently, never occurred in another YTP, so you don't have to worry about that, Cortex reveals to both Robotnik and the audience that they are twin brothers. Except, Robotnik doesn't remember this, despite them both recognizing their own mother. Why is this the case when he can clearly remember why he hates Cortex? This leads me to my own ass theory, one that probably won't hold up, but then again, why else would it be called an ass theory? During a flashback sequence in Part 2, we learned that they attended the same school, where Cortex was popular with the female students due to his luck. This bothers Robotnik, and, out of spite, Cortex makes a homophobic remark towards him. This is where the theory comes in. Cortex, proud of his adoration, completely shuns himself from his family, seeing himself as better than them, especially his brother. Cortex becomes so caught up in his popularity that he completely forgets who his family was, and the passing of time does not help with this at all, as the memories of his childhood become fuzzier. Robotnik spends more time with his mother and transfers to another school, and like Cortex, he forgets that they were even related. He only remembers that incident, his nickname for him, and how he wants to melt Cordy down, his way. See, that's the thing about trauma. For some people, it can spur out of nowhere and otherwise remain so hidden that you don't remember it until it's triggered by something. And Robotnik is clearly traumatized by that incident. With this repressed memory and it blending with Cortex's countless instances of ruining lives, they only know each other as old schoolmates for most of their lives up until the big reveal that they're twins. Maybe Cortex somehow remembered this fact along the way? I don't know, I'm still working out the kinks in this theory. But what I do know is this: the complex bond between Neo and Ivo was iconic. What else is there to say about them? Seriously, I'm running out of steam. But what I am not is done with this video. See, there's a deeper layer than these three relationship types. Within the context of Mashed Bandicoot lies a more complex, more criminally underrated relationship. It brings with it many tragedies and hardships. Truthfully, it's insignificant at a first glance, but when you look upon it in the context of a video essay, it makes one cry. Such a beautiful and tragic story was right in front of us all along, never mind the main plot. I think it's about time I share it with you. In part 2, one of the first scenes of the video shows the villains inside a train. Again, in the YouTube poop, it's stated to be a pointless scene, but in reality, it is not. This is because the train is, in fact, a love train, loved by Cortex. This deep relationship between the two is shattered, And Cortex reveals he also really loves his airship. This is so horrible. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't keep doing this serious facade. I want to do this, but in a less formal way. Don't worry though, I'm still very good with my words. This thing is the ugliest thing. Okay, this is probably the hardest segment to do because I don't want to sound like someone on Twitter who would draw a not safe for work fan art of their favorite entertainers and stalk them on every outlet they have. But I felt that this was equally important to include, even if it means it ends up being one of the shortest segments of the video, so I don't give off the vibe of being an MP cult leader. So with that said, I really like NPCarlsson. For those who don't know, NPCarlsson is a YouTuber from the UK who specializes in YouTube poops. He's also a musician, vlogger, collab hoster, and is now also making the occasional video essay. Also, he has a really nice voice. For this video, I had to watch Mashed Bandicoot more times than I can count, and every time I'm still amazed at how well written it is for a story-based YouTube poop. And when this writing is combined with the beautifully addictive editing, especially in the DLC, I can't get over it. I can't believe that this exists, and I'm so happy there's passion behind it. Passion is the key word here, as is best exemplified through two things. Number one, continuity. A perfect example of this would have to be the Mashed Bandicoot DLC, where they not only carry on continuity and jokes from the original videos in some way, but also include references to other videos on this channel, not just the YouTube poops. I'm sure the dance-off between Crash and Cortex and Shoot Dr. Robotnik is the first thing to come to mind when I say this. And number two, the passion created between him, his work, and his audience. So like number one with a third party. I lied, I'm not very good with my words, alright? It's not my fault, I'm mentally disabled. Even if it's for so much as an opinion for a video premiere, he does a pretty good job of maintaining a communicative relationship with his audience. Rather than waiting for 50k subs, congrats by the way, to release the DLC, he decided to release it anyways because the target audience for Mashed Bandicoot was ready and waiting all along. And even if he did wait for the subscriber count to reach 50,000, it was worth it to see the callbacks and fan service alone. Each ending is, in some way, a love letter to the established YTP continuity on his channel. He's created a strong connection, a relationship, if you will, to what he does best, and that love is shared by nearly everyone who watches him. He could upload a 50-second song called Spro and there will be people who will go, "Damn, Daniel!" This continuity carries on over to the audience as well. Fan art and fan extensions of his YTP MVs are obvious examples, but there's also the two Crash Bandicoot collabs he's hosted. Both the Insane Trilogy and It's About Time collabs have had a good number of references to Mashed Bandicoot. Like, come on, there's a straight up recreation of Aku Aku's monologue in part 1. I think that's kind of obvious how much people loved the video then and still love it now. I have no doubt that even without these references, Mashed Bandicoot has had a massive influence over anyone who's entered his YTP collabs. All the collaborators seem to carry a tiny piece of Mashed Bandicoot's legacy in their entries, regardless of their style. And if being influenced by this totally amazing YouTube done by this totally amazing YouTuber does not totally apply to all of the collaborators, I can think of one person who has totally been influenced by it. And now's the part where I worry about sounding like a narcissist. There's a restaurant in North Carolina called Coastal Cravings. I don't live in the South, but my family goes there every summer, and we ate there once. The restaurant had been featured on Guy Fieri's Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dines, and if you were there, you would have been bombarded with this information. The staff wore shirts saying, "Guy Fieri ate here," and you could buy those shirts. Banners with his name were hung, and the menu was redesigned with a section featuring the food Guy Fieri liked. You could not escape the suffocating grasp of flavor count. So what does that have to do with anything related to NPCarlsson? That was pretty much how my entry was accepted into his It's About Time YouTube collab. When the video confirming the acceptance was released, I was at work, so I couldn't watch it until my break, and even then I was terrified. I told my boyfriend about it, did my cart shift, and when I returned there was a message from him telling me I was literally the first name in the video. I went into a state of shock, which was only amplified when I was finally able to watch the video during my break. I couldn't process it. I was going to be in a collab hosted by one of my favorite YouTubers, featuring another one of my favorite YouTubers, and shooting films was going to be in it. After work, I rushed to my car and celebrated the only way I know how. I told my boyfriend I love him, I treated myself to Wendy's, I hit someone's car in a Barnes & Noble parking lot. That next week was nothing but school and heavy anxiety as the day of the collab drew near. Those emotions also made its way to a Twitter thread of my own that I'm keeping up for now for historical purposes. And when the premiere happened, I was there for every second of it. It was incredible. Side note, I like how most of the live chat collectively were anticipating Shafrillis' entry, including me, and also these were my favorite entries in the collab from what I've seen in standalone uploads. So why did I, a college-bound and highly introverted autistic nerd, get so excited and worked up over a single video? I mean, again, he's one of my favorite YouTubers, but there's more to it than that. This isn't my place to go into detail about the nitty-gritty, and I have a few videos that'll serve as context, which even then only scratches the surface. But I've had it rough in life. I've had to, and still am, overcoming major obstacles. Escapism has always been my go-to for coping, and the past year and a half only amplified that. In late August 2020, I started hyperfixating on Crash Bandicoot, which is still going strong as of this video. Naturally, as someone who's both an experienced writer and was raised on YouTube poops, it was only a matter of time before I encountered Mashed Bandicoot, a discovery that is still one of my personal highlights from 2020. And from that day on, NPCarlsson ended up becoming one of my comfort YouTubers. Since I used to be very involved in watching YouTube poops, I knew he existed primarily from his ping pong poops with Jimmy Davis and collabs like The Shrekkening. I unsubscribed from a lot of YouTube poopers a few years ago because I thought I had moved on from it. We do a little dramatic irony, and it wouldn't be until Mash that I subscribed to him again. One of his videos that had the biggest impact on me was Get In My Car Now. I used to be a band kid, I think that's kind of obvious, and I spent so much time with one of my few school friends and fellow band kids quoting that video by heart. Hell, we're still able 2 years later. During my last weeks of senior year, when we were finally able to go into the building again, I ate most of my lunches alone. I'd usually pull up one of his gameplay videos and feel a lot better about everything. A lot of his content has done that for me. Engine coming out as bisexual and Embryo saying trans raids caught me off guard, but like in a good way. As an essential worker who's had to deal with being in customer service in 2020, it still feels good to plug in the aux cord and blare both Activate the Dance Bot and Domination Army as I'm driving home for some stress relief. And sometimes I don't need a reason to watch his videos. I just do. So the fact that a YouTuber who's had this much of an impact on me during one of the roughest patches of my life thought my work was good enough to be featured in a collaboration with the main source being my current hyperfixation is... I can't even think of what to say. It's still a lot to process months later. That collab is the best thing to happen to me this year. And so far, one of the best things I've ever experienced overall. And for that, I am eternally grateful. In case I haven't made it clear, both NPCarlsson and Mashed Bandicoot hold an important place in my heart. They've helped me push my boundaries. Again, I'm autistic and have an anxiety disorder, so to not only enter a YTP collab when you've never made a YouTube poop in your life, but to also make a video essay with the full knowledge of the creator, it's terrifying. But it shows how deeply impacted by these videos I've been. NPCarlsson, if you're watching this, I don't think I can thank you enough. Maybe there's a reason why I'm first on that list, maybe there isn't. The fact that I'm even there at all means more to me than you'll ever know. To be honest, after I mentioned this essay to you, I completely forgot what I was going to do with it. And after weeks of delaying the process so I could be with my dog during his final days and focus on graduating from my old school, I was finally able to come up with something I hope everyone can enjoy, but especially you, because you've done that so much for me. I'm sorry. I should probably stop recording so I can cry. I'm terrible with endings. I've always have been. In this case, it's because even with this full video, I still feel like I'm struggling to convey how much I appreciate NPCarlsson's channel in a non-stan Twitter kind of way. But I will say this. Thank you, Mashed Bandicoot, for helping me repair the most important relationship of all. Living life and enjoying it. 0 out of 10, there's 5 Nights at Freddy's references.